Module number 1, business ownership level set. Here's what you can expect from this module. We're going to talk about steps of business ownership, attributes of business owners, importance of clear goals for your business, and critical questions to ask yourself along the way. Steps of business ownership. Now, I should note on this slide, this isn't meant to be an end-all be-all, but rather just an overview of the process you go through as an entrepreneur or a small business owner. Step number 1, light bulb moment. Plain and simple, we all have ideas for businesses or different streams of revenue for some of the brands we may like. And those are fleeting ideas sometimes. And that's kind of what the light bulb moment is all about. The idea of this is what I want to do for my business or my product or my service. Step number 2, creating the game plan for a sustainable business venture. So in this step, we're moving beyond just I have an idea to I have an idea and I think it can be a sustainable business. And there are things that go into that and questions you need to ask yourself along the way to start to put that sustainable game plan together, to get customers to say, I want to part with my hard-earned money for your product or your service. There's an idea of getting in business versus staying in business. And we're trying to get you to the point of staying in business. Anybody can get into business, but staying in business, that requires a sustainable game plan. Step number 3, identifying how much funding is required to get your business up and running. Now, it should be noted, in between step 2 and step 3, there's a lot of technical things we're going to be working through and fundamentals of business we're going to be working through in the coming modules. A lot of questions you need to ask yourself as far as, for example, how do I set myself apart from the competition? Or what does my market look like currently for my industry? How many people are in the market? How much money do they have? Do they have expendable income? Does my product or my service require expendable income? These are the kinds of questions you want to be asking yourself, and we're going to be going through together in the coming modules. But just know, in between step 2 and step 3, there's a lot of things that go into that, and they're going to be put together in a formal business plan. So step number 3, identifying how much funding is required to get your business up and running. What people, places, and things do I need? It could be staff. It could be equipment. It could be a piece of real estate. It could be modernizing facilities. It could be licenses that you may need for your business that cost money, or training you need as the business owner to get a certification to run that business in that industry. There's a lot of different things that could go into this that cost money. So you need to know exactly how much money you need to get your business up and running. That helps you with step number 4. So if I know exactly how much money I need to know what funding source I'm going after. It could be a traditional bank. It could be an outside investor. It could be a business partner I'm looking to bring on. It could be a rich uncle or a rich aunt if I have one of those, and I'm lucky enough to have one of those. But step number 4, acquiring those people, places, and things. So I'm going after a funding source here. So I know exactly how much money I need. How am I going to fund that? Maybe it's personal credit cards, and it could be any of those other sources I mentioned as well. It all depends on your individual situation and what's required. But if you're going for an outside investor, a traditional bank, or even bringing on a business partner, they're going to want to see your formal business plan with all of these things spelled out. It only makes sense. If you're asking somebody outside for money, they want to know, if I'm giving you this money, what is it going to be used for? Step number 5, managing the business. Now, you can think of this as like running the day-to-day of your business, and it's easier said than done. There's a lot that goes into that. I would note on this, the caveat would be what you think about your business on day number 1 is going to change rapidly, likely from day 1 to even month number 1 to the end of month number 1. Processes may change. What you had spelled out in your head or on paper might not be the most efficient way to get things done. And there's only really one way to find that out. It's by doing the thing. So this is going to be an ongoing, evergreen process that's going to change rapidly over time. And the idea is you're going to find the most efficient ways to do things over time when you become more experienced in your own business. And then step number 6 is noted here, the exit strategy. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about a little bit more in this module. There's different goals for business owners, and it's not a carbon copy. It's not a one size fits all. There's nothing we can tell you in this course that is going to choose that for you. You need to do some critical thinking, and that's something we'll talk a little bit more throughout this module in particular. Now think about attributes of business owners, or if you think of a successful business owner that you look up to, this would be a little bit easier if we were in person in a classroom environment. But when we do these kinds of classes and this kind of training in person, we often go around the class and people raise their hands. Here are some of the common answers when we ask the question, what do you guys think are some of the traits, skills, and attributes of successful business owners? You see a lot of different ones here. Visionary, self-aware, motivated, reliable, focused, persistent, decisive, disciplined. Any of these skills sound familiar to you? Well, they should. Let's talk about it on the next slide. You guys have these skills, these traits, these attributes from your military service, being a military spouse, or if you're currently serving, or even just in your professional life. Think about that previous slide, or maybe you were thinking of some of your attributes in your own head outside of what were on that slide. Mission focus, critical thinker, being reliable, being persistent, being ethical. These are all skills, traits, and attributes that are closely aligned with military service. Being a team player, that's another one that's huge in military service. And if I were to ask you in a classroom environment, name me one time in the military or in your military service that you are a problem solver. I'm sure a lot of you are laughing because that's a softball question right there. You have to do that every single day in your military service. Now it's just thinking about, okay, I already have these skills, these traits, these attributes within me because I use them all the time, or I use them all the time in my military service. How do I think about it as a business owner now? Just making that switch, flipping that switch from military service, using those skills, those traits, those attributes, to business owner. For example, I'll give you a solid example here. Think about the easiest one probably, problem solver. So I spent 8 years in the Army, and I was in communications, a commo guy. So I worked a lot with radios and electronics, but mostly I worked with radios a lot. And Motor Pool Monday, of course, you check your radios as you do in the Humvees and all the equipment and all the vehicles. And you would go down the line as a commo guy and you would get a call, or somebody would say, or walkie-talkie, or they'd flag you down and say, hey, my radio's not working, or I can't get any comms on my radio. So what do? Of course, as the commo guy, you climb in the truck and you try to figure it out. You're a problem solver. And I would say 50% of the time, it was something small, like it wasn't seated correctly, or a cable wasn't plugged in all the way, or they didn't have the truck turned on. There's a bevy of reasons that were very, very simple problem-solving reasons, and I got to look like the hero because I got to solve it for them. Now think about in the business world. It could be something very similar, very small, like an employee doesn't show up for work one day, so you got to cover down, or there's an accounting question you didn't know or you don't have familiarity with, so you got to seek somebody outside to do that. You have the problem-solving skills to do that, to seek the resources, to seek the help, just like they seek the help of the commo guy on Military Monday. It's just translating that skill that you already have to move the mission forward for your business instead of your military service now. Now think back to that step-by-step chart we had broken down there. Step number 6 was the exit strategy. Now, I didn't talk too much about that yet because I want to make sure we're having a level set on our goals here. Think about your own personal business goals. Why do you want to get into small business or run your own business or be a business owner in the first place? There's some examples here, and I'm not meaning to box anybody in here. I'm just giving some examples. Passing on to the next generation. That's a common goal. Could be a family business model. So I want to create something sustainable that I can pass on to the next generation, and then they can decide if they want to pass it on to the next generation. Personal freedom. That's a very common answer, especially for people that are getting out of the military after 20 plus years or even after 4 plus years. I want to work for myself. I don't want people telling me what I have to do, when I have to do it, what uniform, what time I have to be there. I want that personal freedom. Or it could be financial freedom that I want to create for myself. I don't want to rely on other people. That's a common answer. Growing the business with the intent to sell. For example, we had a gentleman come through our services at VetBiz, and he started a business with a very clear goal from the very beginning of he wanted to grow that business for 5 to 7 years max. That was his time frame. And then he wanted to sell it off and maximize his profit. So work very hard for 5 to 7 years in the business, grow it as much as possible, and then make a profit off of it and wash his hands clean of it. That's just one example. So having these solid, clear goals from the very beginning is something that you should critically think about. And on the next slide, we'll have some more examples here. As I mentioned earlier, it could be selling the business as well, selling it outright. Could be to a business partner that you bring on. So maybe at the very beginning, you're 50-50 business partners, but you have the clear understanding that at some point, you're going to want to sell off your 50% portion to that business partner. An outside investor may look to take on a large majority of your business, or any outside entity, maybe someone that you don't even know yet. Liquidation. Could be simply just selling off those business assets that you create over time, those sales leads, those sales accounts, everything that you have within your business, just liquidating it. Maybe if it's a side hustle or something like that, a little bit smaller. And then succession, passing the business on to the next generation, or as I noted here, an employee. So a little bit different from the family business model. This could be an employee to ownership type model where you have somebody come in underneath you that's not in your bloodline, for example, and they learn the business from the ground up with the understanding that they're going to take over the keys to your business at some point. So they grow from working in the business to then working on the business with you as the business owner. And as I noted, why are we talking about this? Why are we bringing these things up? Why is it important? Well, it's important to have your end destination in mind. Not saying that it can't change, but if you have that end destination in mind, it's a little bit easier to navigate through the day to day. It's kind of a guiding principle for you. And as it says there, informs critical thought before spending your own time, your own treasure, your own talent. What we're really getting at here is the idea of making money and making those clear goals instead of moving money around along the way and hoping everything works out. Here's a question we like to ask in a lot of these introductory classes and courses. Question to consider. How does business ownership differ from management positions? Well, there's a lot of answers that go into this. And they do share, think of like a Venn diagram. They do share a lot of skills, a lot of traits, a lot of attributes. But at the end of the day, the business owner has a little bit more invested than a manager would. And let's just think of a broad example here. For example, if I own a McDonald's franchise and I hire a general manager to run that day to day of the McDonald's for me. So that general manager, let's say it's the best intentioned general manager in the world, does everything they can for the business. They really care about that individual McDonald's location. They care about the employees. They go above and beyond for me as the general manager of that McDonald's. And I can never ask anything more of them. Well, if somebody's opening up, let's say, a Wendy's franchise across the city, and they come into my McDonald's location because they're doing some research and seeing how other fast food chains run in the area, and they have a very positive experience with my general manager. And they say, I had such a good experience here, and I can see that you're running a clean shop here, all good things. I want to give you a 50% raise to come and work for me at Wendy's across the city. Most of the time, There's going to be a lot of other factors involved, but just from that broad example, my general manager is probably going to jump ship. They don't have as much invested. They don't have as much skin in the game from the very beginning. As well as managers, here's another point to consider. Managers a lot of the times will have they will have a business in a box, so to speak. They will have rules, regulations, policies that they follow. Not a whole lot of creative thinking necessarily goes along with that. Whereas the business owner, you have to think a little bit more creatively. You have to create those processes, create that infrastructure yourself, and the buck does stop with you. Another question to consider here: can you clearly and concisely speak about your business to others? And I put the picture of the elevator here. Think about, like, maybe you've heard of an elevator pitch, or if you've ever watched the TV show Shark Tank. What do? They go in front of the sharks, the investors, and they pitch their product or their service. The idea here being you want to be able to speak clearly and concisely about what you do to anyone. Even if they have no idea about your specific industry, you should be able to give them a 1 to 2 minute speech, maybe even 30 seconds if you want to be really brief, and just give them an overview of what you do and how you set yourself apart. Another question to consider here: what makes your business model unique? So, business model essentially are those things that consumers like about your business or that set yourself apart from others in the industry. And I put a picture of a coffee cup here. So let's think about Starbucks coffee, for example. Why in the world do people shop at Starbucks coffee? Why is it an internationally recognized symbol of coffee? What are some of those common answers? It could be the taste. It could be they like the different offerings that they have. It could be the consistency. So no matter what Starbucks location I go to, I know it's going to be roughly the same product, the same service, the same price point. It could be also that maybe it's a little bit more of a status symbol for some people, as opposed to going to the gas station for a cup of coffee or bringing in their own mug. They like that status symbol maybe of Starbucks coffee. Those are all parts of the business model of Starbucks and what makes Starbucks unique from other coffee companies. And Starbucks, we think of it today and we think of it as this international symbol of coffee, but in truth, it took decades and decades to build that business model up. Starbucks coffee started in 1971 as a coffee company. They didn't have all the extra streams of revenue that they have now. So Starbucks' original business model was built off double roasting their beans. So it was built off the differentiating factor of their taste. That's what made them unique from the very beginning in 1971. And then from that, they were able to grow from there over time, and we see what Starbucks is today. So think about your individual business model. What makes you unique? What sets you apart from the competition? What would make a consumer spend their hard-earned time, their cash, their resources with your business? And along with that, you should also ask yourself, how does the customer view your product from their perspective, or your service from their perspective? And that could be all encompassing based on maybe what your social media looks like. If that's important for you, what's your branding? How available is your product or your service to the consumer? Think about consumers' buying habits. How have those changed over the past 30, 40 years? 40 years ago, even 30 years ago, people liked to be sold to. Or I guess even if they didn't like it, they didn't really have much of a choice. People were sold to. Now, how do consumers on a large percentage make their buying decisions? Think about it. If you go let's say, for example, you go to a new city, you go to San Diego, California. You've never been to San Diego, California before, but you're going to spend a week there on vacation because you heard it's nice. So you go there, you check into your hotel, and you want to get something to eat. What's the first thing you do if you've never been to San Diego before to find something to eat? You're going to do some research, most likely. A lot of people are going to jump straight to their phone and go to Google and find restaurants near them and see the reviews, see what people are saying about it, see how close they are, see what their hours are at the restaurant. These are all reviewing factors that we're doing as consumers to make our purchasing decisions. So over time, we have gone from being sold to a large majority of the population to now doing our own research beforehand. So think about how the customer views your product or your service from their perspective. How much information can they gather on your product or your service before making that critical buying decision? That all helps inform that second question there. Why would the customer shop with you over the competition? So, in summary of this module here, those traits, those attributes, and those skills that we laid out earlier in the module during your military service that you already have experience with will definitely give you a leg up on the competition. It's not going to automatically make you a successful business owner, but it gives you that proper leg up on the competition as long as you're willing to roll up your sleeves and do the work just like anybody else. Have a clear goal for your business in mind. Now, this is where I would say, since these are self-paced PowerPoint modules, stop after this module, take some time, whether that's 30 minutes, whether that's a day, whether that's a week, however you want, however long it takes you to actually critically think and sit down. What are my goals for this business or this service or this product? Why am I doing this in the first place? Write those things down so you can have that clear goal in mind. And we gave some examples of those earlier. Call to action, as it says there, take some time to critically think about the questions posed in this module. So, what is your business model? What are my goals? Those are the things I would focus on right now. What makes me unique, or what would set me apart from the competition? And what are my goals for my business? Now, we'll be expanding upon a lot of these fundamentals we've touched on in the coming modules, but really take some time, stop, and consider these questions we posed in this module.